Okay, I would like to call our regular Board of Education meeting, to order. Mr. Walmsley is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening, so if we could all please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next is our mission statement.
At Richmond Community Schools, we provide a quality education that empowers students to be the successful and global community.
Thank you. And Bridget, will you do roll call, please?
Stan?
Here.
Tracy? Here. Jeff?
Here.
Andy?
Here.
Chris? Here. Margaret?
Here.
And I am here. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Next is approval of the agenda. I would like, if the board is good with it, to take item number 10, which is the consent agenda, and move it, now make it number 8, and then move everything else down. And if that works, with that adjustment, I would like to look for a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved. Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Just want to make a quick note that we have started our new year of board meetings, and we are doing things a little different this year. We will be having 2 meetings a month, the second and fourth Mondays of the month. The second Monday of the month, which is this evening, will be what we are going to be referring to as our presentations portion of the agenda of the meeting, and that is where we will be getting information on items so that the 2 weeks following, which is the fourth Monday of the month, that's where we will be doing our business and voting on those issues that come up in the second Monday. This evening we have a couple of things that are different that we will be voting on, but for the most part, that's how our meetings are going to run this year. So with that being said, next item is our True Blue Moment. Lee Elementary, Mr. Berkmeyer.
Good evening. I have a couple pieces of information, some exciting things happening at Will Ali Elementary. First, I'd like to announce that the Will Ali Lego Club has started. I'd like to thank Ms. Durst for her work in getting that going. The Lego Club is in connection with the Richmond Robotics Club, and we have over 80 students involved right now. So it's a very involved club and lots of planning through Ms. Durst. She is accepting donations of Legos since we have so many students involved, if anyone is interested in donating some used Legos. Planning has also started for the Lee Talent Show. Auditions are Wednesday, January 28th, and the show will be Friday, February 27th, so people can put it on their calendar as they want. We are finishing our Dibbles benchmark testing tomorrow. And finally, our NWA testing for our second round will start on Wednesday.
Thank you. Next, the middle school, Mr. Bartels.
Good evening. At the middle school, tomorrow we are having a school-wide PBIS school assembly, and part of that school assembly tomorrow is going to be where our students in some of their classes have written skits of appropriate behavior in different areas of the building, and they took time after school, filmed them, and then we're going to show the entire school their skits on appropriate behavior. Exams are next week. We have next Monday, on Martin Luther King Day, we will be having school-wide teacher professional development. We will be doing whiteboard training with our self-trained teachers. So our teachers will be teaching teachers. And we will be having the ISD come out for some Reaching All Learners training as well. The PTA and Richmond Middle School is putting on a dodgeball tournament on Friday, first annual on Friday, January 30th. The RMS Talent Show is coming up right around the corner. Tryouts were actually today, better known as Follies, and that will be Thursday, February 5th. The PTA and RMS will be doing our 6th annual Winter Fest, and that will be Friday night, February 20th. We always look forward to that. Alexis Rajewski won our school-wide spelling bee just last week. Our GOB is this Wednesday. We are also doing our our ARI testing for our students to measure their growth over the semester of being in the class. And our NWA testing, benchmark testing, will start next week. Thank you.
The high school, this evening, Mr. Bordeaux is going to speak.
Good evening. Mrs. Michon will be here shortly. She's at the MISD with our teacher leader program with 2 of our teachers. So tonight was one of the nights they had to be together. During the December faculty meeting, the staff went online and took the practice test for the new M-STEP test that our juniors will be taking this spring. They will be sharing this with our juniors once a week to prepare them for this new look and how to use the online tools on this new test. Richmond High School juniors of 2016 will be taking the SAT, not the ACT, for the college entrance test. This change was announced on January 7th by state officials. The SAT has been undergoing sweeping revisions that aim for more real-world applications and analysis from students. We will be providing our teachers with professional development as SAT makes available sample tests. We will then start working with our current freshmen and sophomores on test preparation. Melissa LeDuc, a senior, got her article on the Key Club and the Giving Tree published in The Voice during the month of December. If you go to the high school website, you can click on the link and read the article. Brandon Stein, a senior, also got his article on a project in our art class published in The Voice during the month of January. If you go to the high school page, you also can click on that link and read his article. Our AP government class came in 3rd place in the state We the People tournament. Congratulations to Mr. Ladd and our students. And on Wednesday of last week, Mrs. Michon took the CTE director and the principal of New Haven on a tour of our AIS program. She has provided them with additional information that they'll be sharing with their superintendent this week as they consider sending their students to our program. Thank you.
John, excuse me, you said We the People, did you say 3rd?
3rd place.
Okay.
3rd place.
Student activities and athletics, Mr. Benoit.
Hello, everyone. First thing I want to mention is Mr. Brown took 9 students from our business marketing class to a competition against 26 other schools Saturday. The event was held at Lake Orion. Out of the 9 students that competed, we brought home 9 medals. 4 of the students going to qualify for the state competition later in the year. Speaking with Mr. Brown today, it was really exciting just to see the enthusiasm in his voice and just how that competition unfolded. Is very interesting. Congratulations to those students. The Key Club wants to announce that they took an entire car full load of goods from the Giving Tree that was out here for so long and made their donation to Turning Point, which is an outstanding organization. 3 choir students attended district solo and ensemble at Chippewa Valley on Saturday. The students, Daniel Seguin, Carrie Anders, and Haley Fortuna. They're all invited to the state level at Avondale High School on March 27th and 28th. Mr. Delore tells me the SAD chapter is hosting a school dance after the boys and girls varsity game on February 27th. They'll be raising funds to pay for some guest speakers that they're going to invite to the school during prom week. Our cheer team took first place in last week's BWAC competition. Congratulations to the ladies on the cheer team. BWAC competitions in all our sports are into full swing now that we've entered the new year. The boys basketball team is off to a good start at 4-2. They are 2-0 in league competition. The girls basketball team is currently at 6-1 with one loss in BWAC. And the wrestling varsity team is at 12-4. That's my report.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next is items of interest from members of the board. Does anyone have anything?
No, I just want to welcome Chris to this side of the table, and it's going to be a pleasure, I know, to work with you, and just welcome.
Anybody else? Okay. Next will be the consent agenda items. And in this will be approval of the minutes that we had, as well as the personnel report. Brian, would you like to speak to?
Sure. The personnel report I left in front of you today, there were some questions that some of the board members asked, so I responded to that in a memo to you in front of you. I apologize for not getting the one piece ahead of time to you. We have a candidate here, Paula Dowker, who has really gone through the ringer from the process of getting to this point. She comes to us with an extremely well-versed background, experiences in all levels from the middle school and high school, management. As you see in her resume that's attached, she was responsible not only just for the instructional aspect, but marketing, opening schools, literally brand new schools, opening them, to marketing to increase enrollment for students in her schools. She's been a principal, assistant principal, well-versed in curriculum, Common Core, integration of best practices. I am very excited to recommend her to the Board of Education to be part of the team for Richmond Community Schools.
Okay, thank you. A motion would be in order to, do we want to do a motion to accept the minutes? Yeah, how about if we have a motion to accept the minutes that were presented to us first, as well as the closed session, excuse me, minutes?
Do you want the dates of the meetings?
No.
Okay.
Andy, was it you that supported? Okay, it's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. You want to pass back those closed session minutes?
Oh,
Okay.
you got it already.
Here we go. I'll go back to Terry. Then I motion would be in order to accept the personnel report as presented, which is the hiring of a new principal at Lee Elementary.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the personnel report as presented.
Okay. It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion, questions? Okay. I will do a roll call. Dan?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Andy?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Bridget?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. Welcome, and so everyone in the audience knows, Paula, if you'd like to stand up. This is Paula Dowker, our new principal at Lee Elementary. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
And her husband and her daughter are with her as well, so we could,
Do you want me to-
sure, please.
Thank you, everybody. I'm really very excited to be a member of the Richmond Community. And these are my
Excellent, thank you, welcome, we're excited to have you. Thank you. Okay. Next. Okay, next is our presentations portion and budget and finance, the claims and accounts. Just for the rest of the board, this is also a new process that we're starting here, but during budget and finance, this would be where we would go through and ask questions about anything on the register, and then we would get answers from Vicki back there or Brian. So that's what we're going to be doing here. We're going to be going through the check register, but we're also going to approve the checks in that check register at this meeting as well, okay? I did submit my questions, so
Can we go through them?
if you want to start with those, and I don't know if anyone else.
Vicki and I both received questions, so I'll start with some of them. Regarding check 40986 to Matthew Guilford, it's regarding whiteboards. In the summer, we had several whiteboards in the middle school that did not get hung up prior to school. They were ordered through the middle school funds, so he hung those up so we could be ready for open house and school starting for school on that day. He, as well as Mr. Bartels and Mrs. Borwick, spent several days hanging whiteboards up to get them hung up with all the bond construction getting the schools open.
What?
Oh, sorry.
So why would it be that account number?
That was the middle school internal account that he spent or used to charge it against, where the whiteboards were paid for.
Oh, that's where we bought the whiteboards out of?
Right,
So
he bought
that's
it out
what-
of
okay.
the investment.
Okay,
These were in addition to the whiteboards that were purchased by the district through the bond.
okay.
Check number 40989 to Mount Morris. There's a couple questions in this one. One is regarding the volleyball tournament. We did not receive the invoice for the volleyball tournament till November 14th. So in the process, it would have come to us after the cutoff for the December bills, so it's coming to the board at this time. There was some discussion at a previous finance meeting regarding tournament pay, and how much the board was going to pay and so forth. That did not get communicated from the board's intention in June to the process, so we started the fall season with the coaches not 100% on board in terms of knowing. We are in the process of correcting that for the winter and spring. However, there were some, when it was brought to our attention that the winter season, particularly wrestling, had already gone to tournaments, and we're expecting, as in previous year, that the district would be paying for them. So we're trying to minimize the impact on those organizations, but it is not resolved yet. So I'm still working on that for this year. I know I could say going forward, but I'm trying to fix it for this year with what we have. Volleyball, they went to 3 tournaments. The district paid 2 of the 3. The one account got paid out of the volleyball. The check 40994, American Athletic LLC. There was one of the backboard stations in the high school gym was malfunctioning. We had to replace the strap, the winch, and the cable because it wouldn't go up or down, and that's what that cost is for, fixing that backboard for the at the high school. So far, so good. Check 40995, Baracom radios. When I came on board, one of the things that I looked at was our communication system, if our phones were going down or so forth. And we had a radio system in the district, primarily at the middle school and high school. You know, the liaison officer, the principal, the assistant principal, key teachers have them, like the gym teacher if they're going out, the custodian, et cetera. The elementary did not have that level of them. Well, in looking at the radio system, 7 of our radios, by FCC guidelines, we shouldn't be using them because they changed the airways and so forth, so we had to replace 7 of them. The additional 5 were to outfit the early childhood director at Lee in case there's a problem there, getting the secretary one at Lee, the custodian one, so that they had the same team. So 7 of them are replacement devices.
41002, Dahlia's Lawn Service, regarding the invoice was dated November 1st. That started a new contract with Dahlia's. So before paying that bill, we sat down, Vicki and I sat down with them to make sure that the guidelines for the new contract that was approved for lawn cutting service and was followed. There were some fees that had to be corrected on the invoice, et cetera. So by the time all that got squared away, that's why the bill's coming to you now.
And just so everyone knows, my question was, it said
Why are
lawn
we-
service, so why
why
are we paying for
now?
lawn service so long after when lawn service would be done? That was my question.
On check 41008, there's a question regarding the Honeywell International Controller. What is it for? We have two energy management systems. We have a Honeywell and we have the new, it just escaped my mind, with all the new units. Well, during the summer, that Honeywell system went down, and there was 28 hours of trying to figure out what it was and fixing it. It had to be reprogrammed due to power lossage over the summer, and that system had to be fixed. That system controls like this room, the middle school, media center, offices. It didn't get replaced with the new unit vents that are in the buildings. Check number 41019, PMC subs. There were several subs here. One was a middle school, one was a high school subs, and what were they for? The middle school sub on that date was for Sandy Pratko. The high school sub on the 12th was for Joanne and Kelly in the high school. All of them were for contractual dates that they can have, whether it's sick day or personal leave days, et cetera. There's a discrepancy on, not a discrepancy, but some are more than others because of the person who's actually subbing. There's some people who make a higher rate subbing because they previously worked here in the district. And that's been a practice that has carried forward that could be my recommendation we look at when we start this budget season for next year to look at the inconsistencies that we have in our sub pays. And then, so there's one that has a higher rate of pay because there was a, Vicki, help me out here, several years, 3-4 years, this person has been paid this rate of pay? It's been a long.
This is one person.
The one person. Yes. And those are things
Only
that,
on one, I think.
Okay.
the general high school account that's charged that is for high school, there's a line item for teacher subs, and that line item is both, if it's not covered through Title II funds, it's for professional development. Probably the majority of that, I'm gonna guess 95% of that, is for teacher absences, sick
Okay.
days, et cetera. And so there's a line in.
Okay.
Check 41021, Richmond Glass Company. There was a door in the high school where the glass broke. No malicious intent by the student, it just closed and the glass broke, so we had to get the glass fixed and replaced. 41026, reimbursement for containers. If you recall, in June, the student handbook was adjusted that when they're in the lockdown, the cell phones are put into a tub during a lockdown. There needed to be additional tubs for those cell phones. Okay. 41044, Patrick Construction. As you walked into the media center, you might have noticed there's a new showcase. There was a showcase there that was donated on behalf of a student, and forgive me, I forgot the student's name. I thought I wrote it down, but there's a new plaque above it. Well, the showcase over time became in disrepair, so Mrs. Vachon and the high school team wanted to create an academic showcase, so they looked at getting it fixed with new windows and so forth, and highlight academic trophies, and you can see some of those trophies in that. There's also a new nameplate regarding the family who donated to us and for the student's name on that so it can be continue that donation.
So that account is just a high school?
It's a high school internal or student activities account.
Activity.
Yes. And it was, the total showcase for everything is $2,040. So we got part of it woodwork, part of it glass, and then there's a $15 for the plaque that was charged for the engraving. Fred's Boiler Service, check number 41050 is regarding heating and cooling. The middle school boilers in were down at a certain point, and we couldn't figure out why they were down, so we called them in, and it turned out to be that the modular that needed to be refixed in place. And so not only were they able to help figure that out, but they actually install and fix the device. Check 40, am I losing anybody yet, or just holler from going too fast? 41053, these are two memberships that I submitted. One is for the Michigan Parent Teacher Association, and one is for the Michigan School Public Relations Association. And the Parent Teacher Association, my goal is to begin, how do we foster better parent-school community ties as we move forward. And one of my goals as a superintendent is the marketing of the district, and this is a network to get ideas of what others have done, and as well as what's, just thinking outside the box here, what's been successful. So those are two. I do not have an internal account for the superintendent, so that's why they were charged to general fund. 41056, it was a reimbursement for a camera and tripod. In the PE classes, weightlifting, they videotape kids to show them the correct ways of doing things. And so this is a way they can actually set it up. Kids are weightlifting or doing something, and if the teacher's trying to instruct, they can replay it back and actually show them what they're doing wrong. There's a software program that they use in that. So that's what that's for.
So is it, if I can ask Mrs. Michon, then is it a replacement or an additional one? Because they already have one, correct? Did not have one? Oh, okay, got it. That's a district one, okay. Thank you.
Check 41058, it's a reimbursement for a dual enrollment textbook. If a student takes a dual enrollment course and it's a requirement for graduation because they can't get in their schedule, or we don't offer the course, but they need that for graduation, we're required to pay for the textbook as a requirement. This was, once we get the tuition bill in, confirmation that the student finished the course, then we pay the textbook bill.
Oh, so it's not, we're not giving the money back. They purchased it once they finished the class.
This particular one was a refund back because they already purchased the book. Mrs.
Okay.
Michon and I are working with
Okay.
working with procedures that we work directly with the school bookstores at either St. Clair Community College or any of the other colleges the students go to. So we're dealing with them directly rather than a student. The 41061, the sheet, the roofing and sheet metal drain repair. If you remember outside the high school, I had mentioned to the board, I think at the workshop, there was a drain that was broken, and it was held up by a coat hanger,
No.
and it was draining the wrong way and leaking. That's to fix that, and that was not part of the bond work that was done on this side of the high school from the roof repairs.
Okay.
SNA is a membership renewal for the School Nutrition Association for our food service director, and that's paid through nutrition service funds. Check 41065 for marketing to myself. It was for the pencils that were purchased. We purchased 3,500 pencils for the good old days. I just turned in my receipt late, I'll be honest with you. And it was the pencils and the papers that were attached and so forth. 41072, Science Olympiad registration fees. This is has been in years past paid out of the student activities account at the high school. It's not a requirement that students participate in science fair, but it's an extracurricular that they participate in.
And what is that account? Is it the Science Olympiad account then?
Let me check here. Give me a second, I don't have that in front of me. 410.
High School 561?
Oh, HS?
Mm-hmm.
That's a internal, that's a student activities account.
But is it for Science Olympiad specifically?
Science department.
Science department? Okay.
The high school, each department has an internal account that they are allocated in years.
Okay.
41078 is a reimbursement for the the 5th grade girls basketball end of the season party. and that is also a high school instructor. 41100 parking lot. We had to replace and repair some outdoor pole lighting at the middle school and bus garage. We do not have the equipment to get up that high to the poles, so we contract someone to come in. And so that was to replace some lights at the middle school
So
parking lot. and the
nothing
bus
was
garage.
damaged, it was just...
No, it's just bulbs burned out. Sometimes sometimes we have to replace the stuff that's on the building, the sensor, the photo sensor. 41106 is to the Macomb, it's the Transportation Directors Association for Macomb County and St. Clair County.
Okay.
41122, it's a tuition reimbursement. When students apply for a dual enrollment, there's a calculation that we follow based on how many courses are taken through dual enrollment. It gives a dollar amount based on our per pupil. This particular student that was, the family was reimbursed, initially asked for 2 courses. They ended up taking 3. The family paid for the 3rd course, but in the calculation, the 3rd course is allowable. It didn't exceed the amount that we are obligated to pay. So we were reimbursing the family for what they paid for that 3rd dual enrollment course. She wanted 3, and when we redid the calculation, it does qualify once all the final expenditures came in.
So we weren't giving anybody money back for not taking the class, that was my
No,
question.
they had finished, she had finished the class or taken the class, and it was complete, and we were just refunding the parents who put the money out.
And then part of my question was, do we have a deadline? Do we have a deadline if they're taking the class and then they decide they don't, we paid the money and they've.
When
I'm trying
the
to say,
dual
do we get our
enrollment,
money back is there some kind of,
that will be coming in the revised policy for dual enrollment. We actually met today and are beginning regarding putting into the policy or the administrative guidelines, the textbook issue, and we're going to deal with the company rather than the parent being
Right.
out of pocket, as well as a time frame for reimbursement. That will all come in when that policy comes to the board for consideration. But it does need, because right now there's no meat, if you will, in the policy in holding anybody accountable to get that in there. So we want to put some time frames in there so it doesn't drag on. So.
okay.
So you mean that if the students that would follow through with the course and we've paid something for
Right,
it?
that's-
That there's a
that
reimbursement.
got it. Okay.
Because you have so many days to drop the course,
Right,
stuff like
exactly.
that, or, if they didn't, like even returning the book. A student could get the book and then take it back to the student bookstore and sell it for whatever dollars back, well, the
Right,
book
yeah,
belongs to
exactly.
the district. So we
Right,
gotta
'cause
make
we've
sure
paid
we're
for
putting
it.
those,
Got
et
it.
cetera.
Okay.
I think that was all of your questions, and then I did receive some other
That's all
questions.
mine.
One of the questions was regarding 10152 and 10127 regarding Summit Roofing. This is the company that we have worked with in the past regarding our middle school roof, the high school addition roof, and the new roof over the cafeteria and some patchwork. We held a retainage for them. We have not paid the retainage fee for them, so they are still owed, once the job is completed, $70,234.93, but to date, we still owe them $72,000. So we haven't even, they have more than our retainage back. Right now, we're in the process of, as I mentioned to you, we have a new construction manager with Hendricks, so we'll be going through that punch list to make sure what was in the specs was done to close that out before, especially with all the warranty work, et cetera, all the paperwork. Did I get the question? And then the other one was check number 10150. This was, this is the painting one, Ricky? This was Seven Brothers Painting, who was approved back in April as one of the contractors for painting. They go around and have done a whole new addition, painting, the painting in the hallways. So they were approved on, April 28th at the board meeting to be approved. So they're the vendor, and so it was a completion of their duties. And that's all the questions I received.
Does anybody else have any questions that didn't give to Brian beforehand or that might have come through? No? Everyone's good? Okay. Thank you, Brian. Then a motion would be in order to approve the claims and accounts as presented.
Are we approving them here or approving at the next meeting?
Didn't we say we were approving them
Or we're
here
approving
because,
here? Okay, we can approve them.
but didn't we say
Usually
that
we-
way it would be, didn't we say it would be that way? It's when they're done, and
'Cause
then
it's-
done, and then the next month, when they come.
That's not, we can approve. They can do it, they can, but if there's any further conversation, this would be like the workshop meeting and the approval meeting would be on the floor.
No, I think we said
Okay,
we
go
were-
ahead, let's do it. Let's get them paid. There's no question, I want to get them paid. Get them off my back.
Okay. I'm looking for a motion to approve the claims and accounts as presented.
So moved. Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, bond update.
Well, we are moving along. If you've been on Facebook, you will see that our new edition is well underway. Though I told you we would be finishing a couple months ago, I had my doubts, but the tile is going in this week. The finished painting, it really looks remarkable. I would be an envy of a science teacher who gets those classrooms, and I think we're going to be an envy of many districts. But tonight I wanted to give you an update on the heating and cooling. We had several issues that we had dealt with over the summer, especially during the month of August, of getting those heating and cooling units, or the univents, I should say, into our classrooms before the start of school, and getting them balanced and everything for licensing with the early childhood. To date, we are all in, and we have one issue that's remaining, and so I've asked Dale Jerome from French's Architect, who's here, to answer any questions if it results from him, and Todd, I'm going to butcher your last name. Veracruz, okay? From Strategic Energy Solutions. They were the ones that designed the units, et cetera, for what we needed. The issue at the middle school is when, if you picture the previous units, not all of them worked, so they weren't all running and the sound wasn't all in that area. We now have 4 brand new units, and when all 4 are on, it sounds like you're standing next to a freight train, for lack of better words. It's very loud. Most of the time, we were turning them manually off so that classes can teach in there. It's not so bad once the kids are running around, but that initial shock is very cold in the morning. Right now, we are working on a solution, so this is where I'm asking Todd to come up and talk to the board on the status of that project, because I know some board members have received or gotten comments from parents in the community regarding the gym being cold or the sound in the gym. So, Todd, if you want to come up and explain where we are. As Todd's coming up, our elementary units, we are now on the punch list item. There were some units that we had that weren't sealed completely against the wall. We're going through and having them fixed as we're checking off the punch list. The same thing with the high school units. Todd, we'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, first off, I'd like to do a quick recap of the kind of the total scope of the bond among the 3 schools. I'll start off with the middle school. We replaced all the units in the classroom, heating and cooling units. Those have been replaced, and they're in place, being operated right now. We also replaced a lot of sink faucets and various plumbing fixtures throughout the school. And I believe those are all in place and working well. We have added new temperature control system to the entire building that will link in with the other 2 buildings so that you'll be able to access all the new equipment from one spot and be able to diagnose and help get better temperature control throughout the 3 buildings. And then we replaced the 4 gym units, which I'll talk about after I kind of recap everything. From an electrical standpoint, we supported the mechanical equipment, recircuiting the equipment. We've added miscellaneous power to speakers and projectors in the classroom, and then we did some limited lighting replacement throughout the building. So that was pretty much the work scope for the middle school. For the elementary school, it was a similar work scope. We replaced the heating and cooling units in the classrooms. We replaced the sink faucets and miscellaneous plumbing fixtures. We added cooling to the IT room to help keep your racks cool. We added the same temperature control system to all the new equipment. And then on the lighting, we did miscellaneous lighting replacement throughout the school. We had a new clock system, and we did the electrical work to support the mechanical, and I believe for the elementary, all that work has been completed. For the high school, again, it's a similar scope. We replaced the heating and cooling units in each of the classrooms. We added a new air conditioning unit to the head end room. We replaced the units in the gym. We added new HVAC, plumbing, lighting, and power for the addition. And I believe we're scheduled to turn that over on the 20th of this month. I know we're scheduled to punch, to do our final check to make sure that it's all been installed on the 19th. And we also added temperature controls, like I had mentioned, for the other two schools. From an electrical standpoint, there was some site lighting where we added some light to the campus, and it was kind of added to that, to the high school work scope. Added the new clock system, did the auditorium lighting, and we swapped out 500-watt quartz lighting with a lot more efficient LED system that will be able to work with the same dimming system you have now. It's going to save a lot of energy over the life of the system. And we did, like I said, the lighting and power in the addition. So in a nutshell, that's the work that we completed in the bond for the three schools. Back to the middle school with the gym.
Can I interrupt, just a clarification? The auditorium lighting, at the previous board meeting, you approved that lighting, that has not yet been installed.
Correct.
It is on order to be installed, but it was done at a previous board meeting, the approval of that.
It's being worked out through the contractor. It hasn't been approved, but it is in the process to get done.
When's it going to get done?
I don't have a date for that yet. As from a construction process, the contractor is putting together their paperwork to submit to us.
Okay.
For us to do a final review, we'll approve it, and then they'll be able to order it. And at that point, R.C. Hendricks will be able to get a date and work towards a date.
Your best guess?
I do not have I can't hazard. It's up to the contractor to pull their information together.
Got it.
So now into the gym with the loud units. What was there was 4 units that served the room. And like what Brian had mentioned, previous to the renovation, some of the units were operational, some weren't. They were being turned on and off. And there was a noise level that people are accustomed to. So we pulled the equipment down. We put new equipment back up there in a very similar configuration to what was there. It's a heating only. There's a fan and a heating coil, and you blow air across the fan to heat and cool the room. There's what was installed and what is there now. There's a noise issue. We've heard complaints. We've tried to, in November, we gave us our first recommendation is to reduce the amount of airflow that these 4 units are providing to the room to be able to help reduce the noise. As a fan produces more air, it'll spin faster, and that's what's generating the noise in the space, and so we're trying to reduce that by reducing the speed of the fan. There was some argument back and forth with the contractors, but last week we came to an agreement to get that work done at no cost to the project, and it was scheduled to be done today. The technician who had the parts and pieces to install them got in a car accident this morning, and he was not able to make it to the site. I would imagine that they're going to be there tomorrow or the next day, but I didn't talk with the contractor. They haven't confirmed a day with me, but it's going to be in the very short term.
So the loud noise is all going to be taken care of based on what you're saying? That's all going to go away?
That's the goal, is to get it down to a level that is the acceptable level of the noise.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, those 4 units are set under what we call unoccupied mode, and they only go on when the heat in that room hits 65. Being a gym in the room, the kids are moving around, so it's different than a classroom space, but they are set in the unoccupied mode right
Correct.
now to go on but when they go on, it's like you're standing next to a train going right by you. It's loud.
The typical mode of operation, and it'll be for any of the equipment in the school, during an occupied period, the fan is supposed to operate constantly so that it can get the ventilation air, get the air throughout the room, and it's supposed to operate, and you will cycle the heating on and off to be able to maintain temperature. Because there's a noise issue, we put it in an alternate mode, unoccupied. So it'll cycle on like your furnace at home. If it needs to get heat, it'll turn on, and when it doesn't need it, it'll turn off. That's the short-term fix to be able to keep that space as quiet as it can for the most amount of time throughout the day that it can be. As we reduce the thought is, we're reducing the airflow through those units, and that should be able to bring that noise level back to an acceptable level.
So-
Check decibel. Have we done to know that the fix is
That will be towards the final. Right now, it's
Okay.
just walking in and there's no question that there's
Okay.
something wrong.
Yeah.
So
The plan is to check the balancing on it.
and then move into installing the shifts?
Yes.
I'm not sure the terminology, so forgive me.
Yeah, there's a belt, there's 2 pulleys in the belt, and you adjust the size of the pulleys to adjust the speed of the fan. The size of the pulleys or shivs that were there now weren't of adequate size to be able to slow it down enough, so they had to order new ones, which they have in hand, and it's just a matter of installing them and rebalancing.
So once installed, that may fix the issue. If it doesn't, then we start going on to the next plan. Okay, if it doesn't
Correct.
fix it, what's our plan?
I guess you can start changing size of pulleys and stuff, or are we gonna mess around with the efficiency of what we just bought?
No, not at all. So what is in this box is there's a set of filters, there's a heating coil, and there's a fan. The heating coil's the source of heat that's put into the space. We're not adjusting that at all. It will still put out the same amount of heat. When you start slowing the fan down, all you're going to do is start increasing the temperature of the air that leaves the unit, because you're slowing the air as it goes across the coil. So you're still injecting the same amount of heat that you were before. If it is less efficient, it would be a matter of a percent. It would be a very small amount, if any decrease of efficiency at all. Because where your efficiency is really, when you look at a heating hot water system, it's really your boilers what really drives the efficiency of the system.
Yeah, I guess the other question I got is, how did we get in this situation where somehow we didn't see this decibel or the noise problem coming here?
That's a very good question. What we had specified and what was we specified a unit that had a manufacturer's discharge air plenum on the end that would have grills to be able to blow the air into it. That wasn't provided from the manufacturer, and the contractor fabricated their own version of the device. And I think that has a little bit to do with it. And when you go back to the drawings, it wasn't abundantly clear. We had it as a note, I could point right to it. And I think what was provided generated a little bit more noise than what we would have expected. But I think it was just something that got overlooked. Like I said, we put a unit that's very similar to the units that were already up there. You go to a lot of gyms, you'll see units that have ductwork systems that are distributed throughout the gymnasium. That would probably, if I were to do it again, I might do that. But when we went in there, you had units that didn't have any sheet metal up there, and we put a very similar system back in place.
I guess right off the top of my head, I would just say just because what was in there to begin with might not have been right. I mean, I guess that's, if we had someone engineered to take a look at it, I would assume we would get the best technology could buy for what we paid for it. But
Well, I understand what you're saying. I believe when we go into there's a lot of different ways to skin the cat. We went in there was no indication that there was ever any problems in the gym, and so we tried to put something in there that was similar. For a new ductwork system, that would add money to the budget, which would have taken out from other things. We try to give you the most economic mechanical system to most bang for your buck. And I mean, there's a lot of different things we could have done throughout the entire project to try to get, just the best of everything, but we try to make the, judgments on what's the best for the project. And this was one of the things, we didn't think there was any issues before, and so we followed suit. And now that there is an issue, we're here and we will make it right. I'll tell you that, that gym will be quiet when we're all
I'm
said
writing
and done.
that down. It's
I guess it-
7:52.
Okay.
On
I mean, I'm here as a partner. We
No,
worked through this
and
entire
I'm
bond.
with you,
and
I'm your partner all the way, that
so
they're going to make it quiet.
We're going to make it right.
I guess the last question I have is, what's the measure, the metric for right? How do we know what level is acceptable?
Well, sound is a very difficult thing. It's so subjective. What's noisy to some people is totally acceptable to other people.
That's why.
When it comes down to the science, you can measure noise. To do it correctly, you get your handheld noise meter from Radio Shack. That honestly doesn't tell me a lot. I need to know the level of the noise at different octave bands throughout the spectrum of noise. And we can get that. We know what the fan is. We can calculate the noise that comes out of the unit, and we can put, whether it's a sound unit attenuator or some line duct work, or we can do some things, and we can predict what the noise level in the gym is going to be.
As long as we know what the standard is and we make it right, I guess
Oh,
that's the
absolutely.
goal.
Right.
ASHRAE is my Bible. It's American Society of Heating, Refrigeration Engineers of America. It dictates how to do just about anything in the heating and cooling industry. And there's published information on what sound levels should be for classrooms, offices, executive boards, gymnasiums, and we can hit that.
All right, thanks for all your efforts and making sure it's going to be right, so thanks.
Okay?
And for being here to speak with us, we appreciate it
problem.
very much.
The last bond update is, at the previous Finance Committee, we would give the Finance Committee an update on the bond and the dollar amount. So there's a copy for the board on by contractor, what we spent to the bond, what we spent, what's still pending out there, et cetera.
Do you have anything you want to
There's
say
nothing.
with respect to that?
All I can say is the new construction manager we have, Brian, is, he's good for the district. He's very thorough. He's watching out for those punch lists, and so I think the change is going to help us close out a lot of the projects on this. So within the next couple of months or weeks, you should see some of these contractors finishing out and being paid off completely, the money that we're holding for them. That's all.
Are there any other questions with respect to the bond update? Okay, we're going to move on to our bylaws and policy, our first readings. Brian?
Okay. There's a series of bylaws that every year the district receives 2 updates from Neola, the company, the legal company that does our bylaws, as well as our administrative guidelines. In front of you are their fall recommendations from this past fall. And when I had gotten them in, it was late November, having a new board member come on, we felt it was good to bring it in January so that we could hear not only the first reading, but also the approval of it. So I'm going to go with you. Most of the changes, in fact, I could probably say all the changes, have something to do with some type of law out there and requiring us to change. So if we be...
Can I just,
Yep.
and it's, as we've been told, those of us that have been doing this, when it's a change that's made by law, there's not much we can do about it. There's not much discussion from the board. When you see at the end the MCLA, that's a law, so it's not something that we get to discuss. Other things that come through when we're doing these, the first reading, it's our chance to ask questions and maybe change things a little bit, those that we can control. We would do that in a first reading, and then at our meeting on the fourth Monday, that would be what we call our second reading of these, and we would approve them. But ones that are law, we're stuck with them.
So the first policy, and everything that's underlined in bold is what is the recommended changes. And anything strike through is what's on our existing policy, and they're recommending we take it off. So the first one deals with school administrator evaluations, which is including the principal as well as the administrators. A couple of years ago, our legislators passed a measure to increase how much student achievement is part of your evaluation. This puts in item C that at least 25% of it has to be by law based on student achievement growth. As you know, in the legislature, they are trying to define what that is, whether it's going to be the my step or whatever they're going to come up with. But right now, we have some discretion because it's not defined for us. Just references it has to be on a year-end evaluation. And it also references that the Board of Education has to do the superintendent's evaluation. That's by law, and you can't delegate that to someone else, and so forth. And then the last page, on page 2 of that, is the provision that if there were collective bargaining units in place, that this did not take effect until that collective bargaining unit expired. But for us, that doesn't apply. That's for, you just want me to go through them? And okay.
And then if you have any questions as we go along, we'll just ask you.
The policy 2370.01 deals with online and blended learning program. The governor's one of the governor's agendas is any place, anytime learning, and he's been pushing with the legislators online learning. What this policy does is defines what is online learning and blended. In a nutshell, online learning is where you're completely online, and blended is where you spend part of your time in the classroom, etc. It defines as a district that's only students in grades, this policy defines only students in grades 6 through 12 are eligible for online courses. Grades 5 or K through 5 are eligible to participate in blended learning courses if the district provides them. And I apologize for that typo number 2. There's a district shall enroll a student in up to 2 online courses. We're required to pay if a student wants to take their course in online. It has to be through an approved online provider. We typically use Michigan Virtual University or Michigan Virtual High School, and then we do have a consortium agreement with the county as a county to use GenNet as our provider. If the district just talks about if the district denies someone, these are the reasons why you can deny someone for online learning on page 2, A, D, 5A, B through F, and it really talks about have they been successful, because we don't want to set students up that are going to struggle in an online format. Between an online course and what they attend school, as you keep reading down, that you can't have more than a 1.0 FTE assigned to that student. They could be taking 8 courses, but it's still only a 1.0 FTE that we get from the state. It talks about non-resident applicants, and with school of choice, we would have non-resident applicants that could apply, and the reasons that we could have them in an online format. If the district wanted to be an online provider, that's where item G comes in. What we would have to do as a district to be an online provider, which in essence means that any student from across the state of Michigan could take courses in our online courses if we were approved an online provider.
Hey Brian, did you say D2? Did you get that typo?
Yes, you'll notice there's a 9 a lot. I forget to put the shift 9, so the 9 shows up and it doesn't pick up in spell check. So I've already started correcting those, so I apologize for that. But yeah, that's in essence the policy. What will come with this is the guideline specific. What's the procedures, the protocols for signing up, and what vendors do we use, and so forth. But this is the policy. So once approved, we've already started on the policy regarding, or the guidelines regarding it.
And this is all pretty much straightforward.
It's straightforward from the law, correct? Yes. Any other questions on that one? Policy 3220 The first policy I talked about with evaluations regarding administration, this regards professional staff. It says that we have to use student achievement data, a minimum of 25%. We have to rate a staff member in terms of highly effective, effective, minimally effective, and ineffective. There is actually discussion at the legislative level to convert down to 3 groups. If we go to 3 from the state, then we'll have to adjust this policy. Item A on there references if a teacher has a highly effective rating on 3 consecutive years, the district can have the option, if they choose, to evaluate that person every other year if they're highly effective. That would come out in our administrative guidelines, whether we would opt for that. Item C, the second paragraph, talks about student growth measured. Right now, there is no measurement the state has to measure student growth. So what we use in our district is the teachers have 3 items under their student growth, and our administrators have the same thing. One is the NWEA assessment, and then the other 2 are personal goals. In essence, if you've met all 3 of your goals, the NWEA goal and their 2 personal goals, for that subsection of the evaluation, you would be highly effective. If you met 2 of the 3, you're effective. If you met 1 of the 3, you're minimally. And if you met none of them, you would be ineffective for that portion. And that portion weighs the 25% of your evaluation by law. We could go higher, but I would strongly recommend not, because we don't know where this, to put all our ducks in on one test is not good. And we know the state's doing that to us, and it's not a good practice. I would not recommend that. But page 2 talks about if I have a new teacher or a teacher who was ineffective or minimally effective the previous year, what we need to do. And at the mid-year, we have to have a meeting with them. We have to put them on an IDP. All new teachers have to be on an IDP. If I had an ineffective rating or minimally, I need to start my year on an IDP so I can approve those areas that were identified. And it talks about you need to have a discussion on student achievement, the individual development plan of a teacher. The goals are specifically written, classroom observations, reviewing lesson plans to help the teacher improve those 2 areas. We do not have anybody in our district at this level, so I'm proud to say that as a district. And then the last part, which is actually, I'm sure it's being challenged in the courts as we speak, that if a teacher has an ineffective rating for 3 consecutive years, the law requires us to dismiss them as a teacher from the district. And then the last paragraph on page 3 talks, and that's a law for all districts, and every district is trying to grapple with the legislative changes. And page 3 just talks about collective bargaining agreements if they were in place when this would take place. Questions on that one?
Nope.
Student fundraising, 5830. The bulk of this is to be in compliance with the USDA dietary guidelines for Americans and the USDA Smarter Snacks, which basically says from midnight to 30 minutes after school, we can only be selling nutritious snacks. After 30 minutes after school, I guess you're open to sell whatever you want, within reason. But it also references if you have for a donation, you can get this item. Well, if the item is not following the nutritional guidelines, you can't do that during that time frame. So that's what that means in terms of a student fundraising and giveaway or goods and services by a suggested monetary donation. The district website, this talks about the new laws with the ADA, Children's Online Privacy Act, that we cannot link our websites to commercial vendors unless we have a contract with them. You can link our websites to reputable news organizations for contacts, etc. There is, on page 2, there's a prohibition on school district websites, this is by law, that we cannot support candidates or oppose candidates for public office. You can't promote an investigation or prosecution or recall of public candidates or the passage of one way or the other of a tax or bond levy. linkages to other organizations, websites that include such a message. You can't link to someone else who has that message. And you can't support labor organizations. And this came out primarily with the right to work legislation that was passed 2 years ago.
So that language says, if I read it correctly, that if a school district is going for a bond issue,
You can give factual information, but you can't say vote for or
Please vote
vote
for.
You can't.
Please support.
Correct. You can't link it to maybe there's a Citizens for Richmond Community School that's been formed to support a bond or go against it. You can't link to their website one way or the other. You can give factual information, that's it. You can give, like you did in the last bond, where there was a calculator that if you wanted to see what the impact was on your taxes,
Right.
you can do that because you're not saying one way or the other from that angle. You can just give factual information.
you just continue to love to make it difficult.
Under no circumstances should a staff member's webpage report student progress grades in an open format. You can have it through a password like PowerSchool or Blackboard where a parent or a student has to have access to get to it. Using Facebook or MySpace, unless it's for educational purposes, is prohibited. You can have, several of our teachers have some type of social media where students can respond, but it's for an educational purpose, and that is allowable. All the web pages of staff must be hosted by the district. So we have a lot of our staff that use many free, like Weebly's website, and we can continue, but it's got to come through our district to get to that page. And so this will, in the administrative guidelines, will have a lot of clarification for staff specifically, but we can't, the idea is you can't use an outside agency that if we're promoting a district or assignments or requiring students to go to, that doesn't go through our filter system, et cetera. And so any outside agency, such as web pages like Weebly's, would have to be, approved for us to use.
Okay, I have a question with that. Isn't Weebly required? If I'm not mistaken, right, that's what we required? Say it again?
K-8.
K-8, okay.
People or teachers can use either Weebly
Or Fusion? But I would have to say that a huge majority use Weebly, correct? So, that being said, what does that do? Because the question I had was, when this gets ready to be approved, do we know that we're up to date and on board with all these red things? So there's Weebly right there.
If we're linking it from our website, so the teacher goes from Richmond Community Schools, and that's one of those outside agencies that we are working with, and it's an educational entity that we can use those outside agencies. But it's got to be linked from our website to get there. So if I'm Mrs. Ranger, and she has a Weebly account, her link's got to be from our district webpage to get to that Weebly account.
Okay.
Are we there with staff 100%? That's one thing that before this is implemented, I would have to check and go through.
Okay.
That I don't know.
Okay.
I just have a question
Yeah.
about language. It talks about the board's server or the board's, is it the board's or is it the
For
district?
the district.
So like if the staff member creates a web, then it must be hosted on the board's server. I think in other places in policy, it might say district
Yep.
instead of.
I will double check that before the final
Board.
reading.
Okay.
But yeah, that does make sense.
Okay.
The actual.
And I think that, yeah, there's board space, there's other stuff on there, I think that says board on that page.
And then on the bottom of page 2 is all information on our website is to be open to the public unless it has personal information regarding students where it requires a password. But anything on our website should not be blocked from the public viewing unless the blockage is because there is personal identification of a student or staff information which is not releasable to the public. So for instance, when you go into Blackboard, that requires a password, because when you go into Blackboard, there's personal information and student progress about a student, so that's acceptable. But if we didn't have that piece of it, then that website isn't to be blocked by the district. But because of the student information in it, it's acceptable to have a password. So any community member, any member of the parent, the teaching staff, et cetera, should be able to access anything on our website.
So like currently our stuff is password driven to get to
Our
it.
Fusion page.
Your board is because it takes action here. If anybody in this audience wanted this packet right now, they can get that right now. But
Right, so that's, yeah.
But once it's been approved, it becomes, well, it's public record
It's
now,
public record,
but
right.
it's really public record once it's approved. You have on that it's this is the way the board voted. But anything is accessible.
Right. So I guess I was just asking, is that gonna have to change so that even before, prior to our meeting, I mean, you understand what I'm saying?
I understand, and I
I
will
mean,
get clarification.
prior to our
on that.
meetings that-
I will get a clarification on that
Okay.
before we, the next meeting. And that's it for that one. The next one, the acceptable use, the policy, the meat of this is going to be in the guidelines. Acceptable use, 7540.03. They changed some of the terminology from network and internet to educational technology, ed tech, et cetera. But in essence, it encompasses all types of technology students could engage in, whether it's computers, laptops, tablets, personal communication devices, smartphones, et cetera. That's what the first page does. The second page states that if a student is going to use their device, they have to connect through our Wi-Fi system, which has our screeners, or our filter system in it, which is what that paragraph 2 talks about.
And the difference before was we didn't allow them to use them at all, their own device, correct?
Access to incredible, the internet is electronic. A lot of it's word changes in terms of the way they phrased it. I don't see that it prohibits. It might in there, for the appropriate use of policy respective. Has the right to put restrictions on it. It doesn't prevent you, but yes, that could have been the policy with the administrative guidelines. This says if we're going to allow them, which would come out in the administrative guidelines that students are allowed, you have to connect. So in other words, if we have a student that's using their smartphone and the teacher is accepting in the classroom, they're using it, but isn't connected, they would be violating this policy and fall under the disciplinary actions for that. Part of that is because of the filtering system we need to run with and what goes on in accessible
Right.
in our
So-
classrooms. This is a challenge for districts to implement.
Well, because so a teacher is expected to monitor that at the
That's
same
the
time
challenge.
they're trying to teach, to know if they've done that, if they're on.
From my previous experience, it's been more of as the teacher is teaching and sees something inappropriate, it's reacted at that point and realize the student wasn't connected, and then there's discipline. There's not okay, let's everybody pull it out,
Everybody
let me check it out. It's almost impossible.
Yeah. You'd be
But the
spending all your time
expectation
doing that.
has to be to the students that if you're going to use it, especially as we get to this one-to-one
Right.
technology and we allow more and more students to bring it in, that you need to be running through our Wi-Fi system. It also, on the bottom of page 2, talks about that basically this is what we're trying to prevent, and it's and through the Internet, Children's Internet Protection Act, et cetera. On page 3, talks about parents are advised to, it just basically says nothing is 100% protection. And so if we're going to, in this day and age of technology, anything with service, but it's following the federal laws, it's our job to make sure that we're in compliance. At the bottom of 3, and you're going to see it later on, is as students, the students in our district are required to receive education on safety and security while using emails, chat rooms, social media, and other forms. And this will come out what that looks like in our policy, or guidelines, excuse me. The danger of disclosing information online, especially with all the hackers and so forth. And then the consequences of unauthorized accessing, cyberbullying, and unlawful activities for students. So there's an and on the top of page 4 is the fourth one about disclosing and using personal information online regarding with minors. We have an obligation to at least educate our students on this. And in my view, that's part of the signing of the acceptable use policy, that we have something in place that trains or teaches students about that.
And so that's going to come out in the administrative guidelines, how that's going to happen.
Page 4 of 5, with switching over to our email system, our new system, the district is going to be assigning school emails. So if a teacher requires a student to get on Blackboard or one other system that we use, it will be through a district-assigned email that they get on. Part of that is for the safety of the students, that we can track those emails, et cetera. So that's what that piece states. And then 5 talks about the social media, that it's, unless it's for an approved teacher plan or part of an instructional purpose, that they shouldn't be using Facebook, Twitter, or social media outside during the school. Again, technology is an evolving process, as we all know, and the challenge is staying one up and protecting students. And you know, we're gonna put everything we can to do that, but it's challenging. On the flip side, the next policy, 7540.04, talks about staff. It's similar to a student perspective in terms of page 1 is just language changes in the policy from network and internet, talking about educational technology and tech ed that we'll reference. The staff, page 2 talks about staff's expectations about utilizing technology. That's similar to what was in previously. It's fixing some of the language changes, and there's a capital Y there that shouldn't be there. Internet, that's really just more of a description change in the language on page 2. Bottom of page 6 talks about the pursuant of federal law, when the board implements technology, they're required to put protective measures in, such as filters and blocking systems. That we have to look at how open our systems are to staff and the accessibility that students may have with staff around them, or when they're around students. Page 3 talks about that if there's an inappropriate site or something comes up, that the superintendent or the designee, in this case it would probably be the technology coordinator, has the right to disable the person's access if they're using the technology inappropriately in our district. Just as the students are required, the district is also required to help staff understand those 4 components too, and regarding the safety and security of students while using emails, chat rooms, and so forth as they're planning their instruction, training staff on the inherent dangers of students disclosing personal identification, and there's a lot of programs that I'm considering that the sheriff's department utilizes at the county level with internet safety that are phenomenal and some national recognition, to bring them here for some in-servicing and training on staff, as well as the cyberbullying and the disclosing of personal information regarding minors. So there's some obligation on the district to train staff in this area too. Disclosing of personal identifiable information about students online from staff is prohibited, so we can't give personal information about students online. So there will be some clarification on that one. All staff will be signed an email. One of the things that when I came here, there were some staff that did not have emails assigned to the district. We are in the process of assigning all staff email, primarily staff that were paid from the third-party companies we partner with. So we're getting them all. If you have an affiliation with the district, you will have a richmond.k12.mi.us email address here. Staff members. I guess during using the district's network and internet, staff shouldn't be accessing social media unless it's part of the approved plan for the course. And there are several courses that do that. they have blogs and so forth. And we don't want to prevent that, but we just want to make sure staff are aware of it. That's it for that one. Any questions on that one? Okay. Policy 8325, this is a new policy for the district. I'll be honest with you, I was surprised that we did not have this policy. It regards to if anybody in the district was received legal documents in the process of submitting those documents. So if someone was subpoenaed, you have a teacher, and sometimes with custody battles, teachers may get court papers from an attorney that says, you need to turn over this information for my client and so forth. This outlines that information goes to your principal and then ultimately comes to my office. If the board is subpoenaed in a class action, if there's a staff member that's suing the board and there's subpoenas comes to the board, there's procedures and protocols here on who receives that officially from the district and signs that we are in receipt of that. And in doing so, we would work with the district's attorney in the best interest of the district in the case at hand. But this just outlines that if you are receiving notice, and we do get it, especially with custody battles with parents, wanting attendance records, et cetera, when you get that, what's the process for it? And then the second page of that, on page 2, talks about independent counsel, that the board cannot prohibit an employee from consulting with their own independent counsel, especially if they're in, if there's a case that, you don't mind me using it as an example, Mrs. Ranger, she feels that the advice our attorney is looking out isn't maybe in the best interest for her. She has every right. We can't prevent her from getting her own legal counsel. And that's all that says. But if she's an employee of the district, she's represented under our legal counsel for protection if something were to happen.
That's probably another question.
Yes.
District language versus board language?
Yes, district versus board.
I don't know. Just check.
Yep, I will follow up on that and get back to you. 8330 talks about student records. It clarifies some FERPA information and who the district has to train regarding FERPA information and what role they are. In essence, if a person or company with whom the board contracts to perform a specific task, they shouldn't be giving out information under the FERPA regulations, whether it's contracted substitutes, custodians, food service, they fall under the jurisdiction that we need to educate them, and if they do violate that, then the liability the district has, even though they are a contracted employee. So that the policy defines that.
And can I just say,
Yep.
so then this means there'll be some kind of training?
Yes,
With
we
respect to
we
this that
did
goes along
at
with
the
this policy?
Yes, we did at the beginning of the year. We sent out to staff regarding online training. My agenda for the first meeting in August, when we do the welcome back address with me, is there's multiple breakout sessions where staff will rotate through the day and, talk about cyberbullying, get information on technology, FERPA information, just to bring all staff at that point, and then mimic that during the hiring process for staff to come in after the start of the school year. And it's at an ongoing yearly basis.
And so with the idea that every employee understands?
The FERPA is a serious issue.
Okay.
FERPA violations are a serious issue. Page 3 talks about if we have parents or students serving on an official committee, and this references grievance and discipline. I know we had some conversations as a board prior to that, but if we did, they are responsible to be respectful to FERPA regulations and so forth. They cannot violate that information. And so that becomes a little more challenging, but because they're privy to information that they normally wouldn't have. Page 4 talks about disclosing information. We will not disclose to any entity a student or his or her family member's social security number, religion, political affiliation, voting history, or biometric information. Biometric, DNA information, and et cetera. That's what that page talks about. Page 5 and 6 talks about what items are considered directory information. There's a couple items that I recommend we add because they're used for a variety of information, whether we report students' awards, whether we report things in the newspaper, whether we put together a program, and so forth. One of them is students' addresses, phone numbers, dates of birth, and places of birth, date of attendance. Class of is a good example for the date of attendance. We report the class of, and sometimes we list names. And we got to make sure that when we do that, it's not just necessarily in a book for directory information, that we're in compliance with the policy. If there's a parent who has opted not to have their information released in directory, which we mark in PowerSchool, that information then is not released through directory information. The other items didn't change. On page 6, it does say email information is limited. We do not give that information out, especially student emails. It is strictly for educational purposes, and we do not have to give that out for directory information. Otherwise, the rest of that policy did not change.
Is this a recommendation, or is this based on law, the address, phone number, and place of birth?
That is a recommendation from Neola that these items are in yours. They were not in our current policy, and I'm recommending based on Neola's recommendation that we do put them in our policy. Almost done. 8500, food service. In essence, this policy talks about if we have a student with a disability or major life activity that's affected with a disability that requires an alternate meal, as long as we have something by a certified physician, we do not have to meet the dietary restrictions that we have for the Nutrition Services Department. We meet the needs that the physician has outlined in what they provide us. This would be really on a case, but this is not a normal practice. But every once in a while, we have a student that, for whatever reason, what we serve, they can't have, and so we have to provide an alternate. And right now, if we provide the alternate, it's got to meet the same USDA requirements for nutritional value, et cetera. But if the physician says provide this instead, we're okay with providing that as long as we have that documentation. We can substitute milk, the nutritional value of milk if we have a signed parent request. The operations of the foods, I'm sorry.
So doing that, that's okay?
The milk
No,
substitution?
when you're talking about the physician.
Yes, as long as we
say
have the
whatever.
physician, we can omit foods if they say,
This is what Neola?
that's what Neola, these are all what Neola has suggested based on situations that have occurred and.
Okay.
On the second page, A, B, C, E, and D, E, and F, excuse me, weren't existing. Neola is recommending, I strongly recommend too, that we train our food service employees with complying with food holds and recalls, which we already do, but it's adding to the policy. So as we get notification of recalls from the state on food items, that they know exactly what to do when that recall comes through, which Sue Bevins, our food service, already coordinates this with staff. It's just now in our policy. And then the description of the popcorn, chewing gum, hard candies, we have to be in compliance with the USDA dietary guidelines and the USDA Smart Snacks in School Nutrition Guidelines. So it eliminates all that and just says we have to be in compliance with that law, which basically is the midnight, 30 minutes after school rule. Any questions over there?
Nope.
We're at the home stretch here. 8510 is the wellness policy. The details of the wellness committee and so forth come in the guidelines, but in essence, these are the expectations that when we're looking at nutritional education, a lot of this is what we would want in a physical education program. When we offer physical activities to students, school-based activities that interfere with lunch, that we're not preventing students from eating, that they have the right to, and the opportunity to eat their lunch during that time. So going, from page 1, the only addition there is that, our goal for nutrition education, that kids, it's developmentally appropriate, culturally relevant with the students that we serve, and that it's fun, enjoyable. Kids get excited about learning about it, whether it's through contest promotion, taste testing events, which our food service will begin doing some taste testing events soon. Page 2 talks about in physical education programs, we want to encourage team sport and lifelong physical activity, which is the essence of our course. That a properly certified teacher is providing instruction in physical education. That there's a plan to meet all needs of students, including those that aren't academically gifted in athletics. That we work with all students in those physical education classrooms. Physical activities, talk about we need to get up and move throughout the day. We don't want our students to be sitting for the entire length of the day. We want activities to get them up and moving, whether it's between classes, within classes, and we do that in multiple aspects of the organization. After-school programming is developmentally appropriate with physical activities for students who participate. This isn't necessarily specific to a law, but these are recommended that we adopt in our wellness policy to be guides as we look at curriculum and look at programs that we fall under these guides of developing that core standard.
Just a quick question about where it talks about having club meetings not scheduled during meal times.
That's the goal. But if
I'm right that it says that they can have them as long as they're eating.
As long as the students have an opportunity to eat their lunch. Right? So if the National Honor Society wants to hold a meeting during lunch, that's fine, but the teacher can't prevent them from eating at this meeting. We have to allow students to eat. That's all that's saying.
Got it.
And sometimes a lot of the clubs will meet, or groups will meet during that time.
Sure. Just wanted to-
Page 3, under the USDA guidelines or recommendations, we shouldn't be rewarding children involving candy or other foods that undermine our message of dietary habits. It's a struggle for me because I like Tootsie Pops. So. Food and beverages sold to students to a fundraiser outside need to follow those guidelines of the extended day of midnight to 30 minutes. Yes.
Is it so the school-sponsored fundraising? Is that what this
one's regarding school-sponsored. Later on, you're going to see there's
one.
one that also talks about our boosters and so forth that have affiliation that they need to follow, yes.
I knew what it's someplace.
Pretty much the other items just say exactly the same thing. Nutritional values meeting the state USDA standards on page 4. Nothing changed on page 5 and nothing changed on page 6. 9211, district-supported organizations. This is where our PTOs, boosters also need to follow the discretion of the midnight to 30 minutes after school in selling foods. They can go home, but if they're going to eat and consume them, they can't be. It has to be have a nutritional value. That's it for 9211. I think the last one is 9800. Previous policy was dealing with World War II and Korean conflicts. Staff members who received honorary diplomas because they had served, they might have been drafted or gone into that, never finished the high school. It now adds the Vietnam era vets to that list. And
That's just now happening.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Pretty much.
that's
Is
it.
that interesting?
Takes us a while.
Okay. That's the first reading. If anyone has any issues or questions about anything we went through, let Brian know. The next meeting will be the second reading and the approval of those policies changes. Okay, next, freshman sports update.
In your backup, you received two documents. One was another copy of what was presented in December regarding freshman sports. And then we also, Mr. Benoit and I worked on extending that, what we knew were our expenses and what we estimated as expenses regarding freshman boys basketball, freshman girls basketball, and baseball. And so when you add up the revenue column and you add up the expense column for freshman sports for this year, there is a shortfall, as you can see in the brackets of $7,600 roughly. We talked about this, fixing it for this year, moving money from the 105, HS 105, which we talked about at the December meeting, to the 104, HS 104, which is our freshman sports. That move has been made. So the freshman sports this year will, the shortfall, based on what the board has intended last year, has been fixed for this year. Now the marketing or the campaign is for next year. And so on Wednesday, I'm going to the athletic booster meeting. You can tell its importance up here in town. Mr. Benoit and I will be scheduling meetings with the head coaches of all this group to begin planning for next year. So when we bring the budget to you in officially in June, that will all be ironed out, and the conversation will have happened with each one of these groups prior, so there's no surprises as it was this year for many of them as you receive calls from them. So they are estimated. So in June, those estimation, and if you've got looking at it online, they're in blue, will get changed over to what we actually took. So it may be better for us. We estimated on the high end for transportation and the low end on gate receipts, with the idea that it's going to be better for us once all the dust settles for this year. Okay.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Again, I want to commend Mr. Benoit on this one. He's really taken charge on this one, and we've worked pretty well together and figured out athletics ourselves and the ins and outs of it. So I do appreciate his hard work on it.
The board appreciates it as well, Mr. Benoit. Thank you. Any other questions about that? Okay. Moving on, this is the portion of our meeting where it's public comment, and just to kind of go over to, since we've changed our meeting, our public comments for this meeting have been moved to the bottom, since everything that we are talking about is all discussion, which we will be voting on for the next week. So we moved our public comment towards the bottom of the meeting so that anyone in the audience could ask questions or make comments with respect to what's gone on at the meeting. At our meeting, our second meeting of the month, the public comment will be back up at the top. But we're trying to accommodate anyone who's in the audience who might have comments about what we've discussed at this presentation meeting. That being said, this is the portion of our meeting that is public comments. If there's anyone who would like to address the board, please do so. There should be a card up there that you can leave your name and number, and we would get back with you if you need to. And you have 3 minutes. So is there anyone who would like to address the board?
Give me 1 second here to lay this stuff out so I can. Most of you here know who I am. I'm no stranger to the board or talk about particular issues. Based on.
Just say who we are, just for the whole public.
I'm sorry?
Just say your name for the whole.
Oh, Christopher Columbus Donato.
Thank you.
Okay. With all the things you guys just talked about and all the different policies that you have to review, it's no easy burden to go through all of that. With that being said, though, there are policies within the district that have been there for a long time. There are certain things that need to be done to help the education of our children that need to be done and aren't being done. There is one particular policy that helps the students who choose to use it and helps the parents that want to monitor it, and that's your grading policies. Your grading policies, based upon the current district policy is the fact that the teachers go through the classrooms, they grade their papers, and by that next Tuesday, those grades are to be submitted to Power School. What has been occurring? Last year, I had a run-in with a particular teacher regarding this. We had meetings with the administrative staff and the district and whatnot to talk about this. And by the time we got done, we were able to get these things done. Grades were not being entered for weeks and months at a time. Back in November, approximately November 18th, I was at my cottage and I made a phone call to the district, talked to the district about another such issue where grades aren't being put in. That is a policy that was discussed. After discussing this policy, I was told that that would be monitored and it would be reviewed to make sure that that was continuing. Again, later on then in December, I made another such call because things weren't getting put in. As a matter of fact, a lot of the grades back in November, as far back as November 6th, still had not been put in. A third time I came in, my son came home to me and very distraught because a teacher came to him about a paper that had been plagiarized, asking him why his paper was exactly the same as somebody else's. Well, he was extremely scared about the process. He believes truly that that stuff should not be done. I trusted my son, but I asked him very, very hard questions that evening because I wanted to make sure that he was telling the truth. He searched out documentation. The problem was the documentation that he was searching out was from a month prior. On November 18th, he had turned in a paper and hadn't heard nothing about it. On December 18th, he gets a notification from his teacher that this paper had been plagiarized. I came in very rapidly the next day, and I talked to one of the district staff, and they told me that it had been cleared up and that the person who plagiarized his document admitted to it. I was faced with doing very, very hard questions to my son regarding this document. Secondarily, the document was a month old, had not been put in. This teacher is grading documents a month after they were supposed to have been done. That is unconscionable. The fact of the matter is that teaching is done based upon building upon what they've done in the past. And if you do not grade these papers and you do not tell these kids where their grades are, where they stand, they don't know whether they've got it right or they've got it wrong. When I made another phone call here in January, I was extremely upset because documents still were not put in. I got proof and documentation that it hadn't been done, even after I was told multiple times that it was going to get monitored and it was going to get done. Now, my son is trying real hard to try to get as good a grades as he can. And I told people here that he was trying to strive for as high as, or close to a 4.0 average as he could. Looking at his grades, I was told, well, he must not be trying that hard. He's got a summative with a B on it, another summative with a B minus, and he didn't ask to redo those papers. We're talking about a child that's got 5 A's and 1 B. Also happened to be one of the students that qualified for states at the DECA program. And I was told, I was insulted with the fact that this teacher told me my student should be trying that hard when we should have been looking at what the teacher was doing. It wasn't until January 6th that when I notified the school, they had 1 document out of 5 assignments in there as of January 6th. As of January 7th, there were 14 documents in there, about 10 of which had grades. On January 8th, there were 18 documents. And a lot of these documents that were put in there, I don't believe to be right because I got grades where he's showing an F and other grades where he's showing an A, some that show 0 out of 20. Where's these documents? The fact of the matter is that I was told that these are the policies. I came back and at that same time frame, I was told that the teacher's policy was that once they turn those documents in, that kid has that opportunity to then retake those tests, no matter how late they were. So my question is, who's running the school? The teachers or the district? If the district's policy is that these grades get put in, and it takes them 2 months to put them in, for God's sakes, that's wrong. Something needs to get done. And it's not like I didn't come here and talk to the people about it. And I haven't come here time and time again about it. What I'm asking for is that things get done properly. I got a kid here, he's got a fantastic grade record, he's doing all the things, and I'm told, well, he must be not trying that hard. That, I about blew a gasket. When they try to turn what was the teacher was doing versus what was going on with the student. And that is completely wrong. The fact of the matter is things must get done in a timely manner so these kids can monitor it. He is completely discouraged with the fact that he can't go in and monitor his grades. We look today, and there's a few more grades on there that he has no clue where those grades came from or what they were. So I don't know what can be done, but this has got to stop, and we got to start looking, we got to be, rather than being advocates for the teachers, we got to be running the school. And that's the problem we've got right now. I'm a big supporter of the teachers. We got a lot of fantastic teachers out there, but we got some that just don't do their job, and that needs to be addressed.
Certainly.
Hi, I'm Kathy Miller, and I'm one of your early childhood parapros. I trust your judgment and hard work on choosing our new candidate for, well, she's not a candidate, she's going to be our new principal. Could you share at all her early childhood and elementary background?
We don't normally respond. Is that all that you?
Yeah, because I didn't hear any of that when you talked about her in your presentation tonight, when you introduced
talked
her.
about the other
I just
things
heard
about
high
her?
school,
Okay.
middle school, and
Yep.
some marketing stuff, so I was just wondering.
She's been an elementary principal, which had programs in her building, especially with the early childhood, since 2007, so for 8 years now. She's been a elementary specialist prior to that for about 1.5 years. She's been a consultant and trainer with elementary staff pre-K through 8 in January 5 through February 6. She wasn't, last time she was in the secondary level was the middle school principal and assistant principal back in 1999 to 2003. So primarily from 2003 on has been all elementary, has been her focus with the preschool through, she actually had a preschool through grade 7 building.
Oh, great, fantastic, because I'm just hearing
Right.
street talk.
No, and that's.
And I know down my hall, there's comments, and so I just wanted to be able to go tomorrow and have some information.
And I think that's good to
Thank you.
get that information. I think that's a good thing. Anyone else? Okay, moving on, consent agenda. Whoops, action item, sorry, I'm looking on the wrong sheet here, sorry. Action item, approval of financial institutions.
At the January 5th board meeting, we approved the financial institutions, and at that meeting, we have been moving all of our money to PNC Bank, and First State was primarily the athletics, but I failed to, and I apologize for this, Flagstar Bank has our investments from our bond. So I'm asking that we ask to approve Flagstar Bank as one of our banking institutions, primarily because of the bond investments we have there as we complete this bond project. So I apologize for that.
Okay, that would probably be a good idea.
Yes, that would be.
A motion would be in order.
I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and amend the approval of the district's financial institutions as presented on January 5th, 2014, to include Flagstar Bank.
Would be 2015.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, yes, that
right decade at least.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are finished with our business for this evening, and we are adjourned at 8:52.